There it goes. It should be going. So again, I'll just reintroduce myself real quickly. My name is Andy Johns. I am the new fellow for the Parks and Green Space work group. I'm a second-year student at the Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, and I'm interested in epidemiology to kind of make a wider breadth into physical activity than I was doing previously. So everyone who is here in the meeting right now, I would love it if you could drop your name, affiliation, and any special interest into the chat, just so everybody can kind of see who's here, as well as we can count how many people were here at the end of the meeting. I would greatly appreciate that.
We might even take a minute, and because there's only a handful of us to actually talk to each other. If you
Yeah, absolutely.
If we got time.
Yeah, we can absolutely take a minute. So we'll go ahead and take, let's say 2 minutes here and see if anyone else wants to join us. And then during that 2 minutes, feel free to, again, put your name, affiliation, and special interest into the chat there. And then we'll get moving after about 2 minutes here.
It's hard to put all your interests in just a little chat box.
Yeah, just brief interests is perfectly okay today. All right, so we are right at about 2 minutes, and it doesn't look like anyone else joined us. So we'll go ahead and just get started, and hopefully people can watch after the fact. So again, this is me, but let's introduce our work group co-chairs. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. They didn't necessarily know this. I added this slide this morning, so hopefully they have something. Just a quick introduction, but I'm going to invite Rich to turn on his mic and introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Name is Rich Christiana, Appalachian State University, Associate Professor of Public Health.
And now I'm going to invite Jeanette to introduce herself.
Hi, Jeanette Gustat, Tulane University.
And then lastly,
yeah, that's it. Okay.
lastly, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Slater. I'm at Concordia University, Wisconsin. I'm with our undergraduate public health program.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. So today's just a quick meeting agenda. We wanted to jump on, kind of do an introduction into the year, into the academic year, and kind of get some ideas of maybe some speakers people would be interested in listening to, or if anyone has any connections to speakers, that would be great. We'll also hopefully get some subgroup updates if anyone's here. We'll have an open mic time, and then we'll kind of talk about next meetings and stuff like that. So this might be quick, it might be long, it depends on how long we want to chat about things. So I just wanted to bring up our mission statement as the Parks and Green Space Work Group. And it's on the screen, but I'll read it to you. So it says, to build a multidisciplinary network of researchers and practitioners from academia, nonprofit organizations, government, and the private sector to, one, increase the amount of quality of research and evaluation in the area of parks and recreation policy, physical activity, and health. And two, support and facilitate the development and implementation of evidence-informed policies, practices related to that parks and green spaces. So that's our overall mission here. within the work group. And that's kind of what we want to do as this group. So looking at our speaker schedule, as you can see, it is very open.
Hold on. I mean, I was in another work group meeting, and this is where we sort of had a chance to breathe and take a relook at this work group mission, if everybody's okay with that, because new year or new whatever cycle for the PAPREN starting this fall, and if everybody is okay with this mission.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to hear comments or what you think about our mission. So if you have any opinions, feel free to turn on your mic and let us know.
Are there any non-researchers on this call other than myself?
I'm not sure today. I know there are quite a few non-research members we have in our listserv that do get the meeting updates and do get the invites and everything like that. So there is a pretty large group of non-research focused people in the membership group.
And Robbie, you're kind of in between too, right? Don't you straddle both worlds?
Well, I'm not really practicing much anymore. So really what little work I do is actually research based. I mean, the only thing I'm getting paid to do right now is the project for the National Park Service, which is basically the Trails Calculator project. So I guess you would consider that research. But yes, I do straddle lots of things.
Yeah, we have many different members throughout the listserv that kind of cover a wide variety of places and people and organizations and things like that too. So
But I think it's always good to point out that I think maybe we are research heavy and looking to ways to connect to more practitioners.
absolutely.
So that gets into a thought that I hadn't quite finished formulating on this thing. Is there an item 3 that would be, one of the reasons I'm here is the networking part of it, getting to know who's doing what and potential collaborations. And I'm enjoying hearing what everybody else is doing. That inspires ideas for more research or for more dissemination methods. So maybe there's a third part of this, which is somehow related to those things of building this sort of network. And that ties into what you just said about getting others involved who are not necessarily just doing the research, but spreading the word, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a very good point and very well heard.
And the reason why I ask is, at the SHIFT conference, PAPREN came up quite a bit, and there weren't just researchers there. There were, government entities. There were a few community-based organizations. So I just was bringing that up. And then the second thing, even though we have an equity task force, working group, which we're presenting this week, I am wondering if we still mention an equitable framework here in this mission statement, since the White House did in its announcement at the end of September, talk about increasing equitable access to nature and, parks, nature spaces at the end of last month. And so I just, I was wondering if we should still talk about equity should be sort of a part of every framework as we think about additional people on the call, different additional organizations, policy.
I was just kind of
Go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say I can piggyback off of what Laura said. In terms of the SHIFT, there's a lot of folks that are on our listserv and regular participants that were at SHIFT a few weeks ago. Yeah, I think that equity piece was kind of the main focal point of what everything, or what a lot of the topics and conversation was around, was that equity piece and access. So that would yeah, that might make sense to kind of keep in mind.
Jeanette, did you have something to say or to add?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we were more explicit about that, maybe that would be visible to people who just get the news or the updates, and maybe that would be more encouraging to have people joining if we were more explicit about some things. Like maybe that or maybe someone said 0.3, like maybe that was Robbie, to add an additional point to that, but
Yeah, and I think and now that I look at this closer, what I said does kind of relate to number 2 in that it's that implementation piece in a way, I mean, getting these other people involved is taking it from the research into and the development, but into implementation. And I think that's what those other members or other participants bring to this. So whether it's a restatement of number 2 or add addition of a number 3 in terms of that, involvement of these other people that isn't necessarily purely research, but it's part of that implementation and dissemination and putting things into practice. And then the equity thing might be that number 3.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have any opinions on adding an equity statement or a networking piece to our mission statement here? Akimi, I see your hand is raised. You can unmute your mic whenever you're ready, if that's available.
Yes, hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Akimi Smith, and I currently work in the physical activity and health branch at CDC. And I know a lot of us on my team were trying to be a representative for each of the work groups. And I've been doing a lot of parks and green space work for my team. And so I'm not sure if anyone from CDC has been attending these work group meetings, but I did just want to say I do agree with adding the equity piece. We actually just collaborated with the community guide, and we just released a new recommendation that focused on equity, saying that equitable access to physical activity in parks, trails, and greenways increases access to physical activity. And I just worked with the National Recreation and Park Association, so NRPA. I'm not sure if they've been joining the PAPREN calls, but we just released the implementation guidance to work with practitioners who are doing this work to give them guidance on how to make sure the work that they're doing is equitable and it increases access. So yeah, I just definitely agree with adding that statement. So I just wanted to share with others, and I'm happy to share that link to the recommendation.
thank you so much, Akimi. Yeah. Rich and Sandy and myself, we are co-leads for this group, and David has been participating.
Yes. Okay.
With our, I don't know, are you guys switching off or is there some, I don't know if something's going, or you're just coming to and he's just not here today, or I don't know. I didn't catch that he said anything about if he's switched, the CDC rep is changing. So I guess I wasn't aware you were a CDC rep. So welcome. Thank you for coming. We appreciate that. And in the past, we've had NRPA folks attend. I guess that might have been several years ago. I don't know if anybody's attended from there recently. Sandy, would you know?
I haven't seen anyone from NRPA join recently. I mean, we could reach out to them again. It's been a while. I mean, but yes, they have been included.
Okay,
Kimmy,
awesome.
they definitely have been included in the past in this group.
Awesome. And I know David, he's going to be retiring sometime within the next year or two. And so I was just told to join this work group, but he also may be joining the calls as well.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't mean to imply that somebody shouldn't or there couldn't be
Yeah.
two. Welcome, everyone is welcome. Just used to seeing David, but happy that you are with us as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it seems like most people are thinking we should add an equity piece to this. So we'll go ahead and look into that.
Edie put something in the chat as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I just, I was perusing the APHA website just because their conference is coming up, and buried in one, I can't remember which of the topic areas it has to do with Olmsted's 200th celebration of his birthday. It says, we believe in equitable access to parks and nature spaces or something like that, which I don't know if that's in their mission statement or whatever, but I just happened to come across it. And so I just think it's important to mention wherever we can.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is important to bring up even in context, and having that that part in there will make people hopefully feel more welcome too, and know that we do want that equity focused. Edie did put in the chat, I agree that equity should be a focus, and networking with applied practitioners in the field is important. So it seems they agree as well.
Maybe we could even make a note. I just looked, I didn't realize it was 200th anniversary of Olmsted, Frederick Olmsted's birth. So I'm looking at up, and there's a pretty picture on the web, several pretty pictures on the website for that. Okay.
And thank you for that link there in the chat too, Akimi. Is that the guidelines that you were talking about? Anybody else have anything that they might want to add to the mission statement, or things that they think we should include? Any other thoughts on this before we move on? No. Okay, so Edie did just put in the chat, I am doing a geo analysis of park acreage in the Twin Cities right now, and had an opportunity to speak with park board professionals who gave important context around GIS data information we wouldn't know if we didn't reach out to community leaders in the park space. I think that's very interesting topic to look at there, because I'm in spatial epidemiology course right now learning about GIS maps. So, all right, so if anybody else doesn't have any comments, we'll go ahead and move on to talking about speakers.
So wait, what's our action item? Yeah. Sandy?
Or are you looking at me?
Oh, I thought you were about to say something.
I was about to say, all right, so we agree that we should have an equity piece, but how, like, we need to figure out exactly what that equity piece is going to say in our mission statement.
Yeah, that's all I meant, is like,
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So in the mission statement right now, we've got these two components. One is focusing on quality of research and evaluation, and the other is supporting and facilitating the development and implementation for evidence-informed policies, practices related to parks and green space. I mean, do we want a third one that addresses equity, or do we want these two to basically say that this is helping to facilitate equitable access to parks and green space, or something like that? I mean, do people have thoughts or ideas on how they want equity incorporated into the mission statement before we move on?
Well, when we just finished sort of noodling our mission statement for our network, and we use some language around, safe, welcoming, and equitable access, or equitable access to safe and welcoming outdoor nature spaces or whatever, but you could apply it to parks and green space, so to use the kind of, it's not necessarily an evidence-based what's safe and welcome. I mean, you could certainly use some metrics around safe, but welcoming, just sort of getting the framework of spaces should be welcoming to all people. Just putting some language out there for consideration.
yeah, and I think 1 and 2 need to be, I don't know, be sort of within that framework of equitable access. So whether that's a third point, or just how we think about the amount and quality of research and facilitate development and implementation within that framework, or it's a separate point, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it really needs to be either in 1 and 2, like that wording needs to be in both of those, or in the beginning opening statement.
Yeah, I mean, you could say to build a multidisciplinary network of all those who are committed to, and focus on number 1, number 2.
Yeah, so should we
Yeah, I mean, you could say, and the private sector who are committed to access and are increasing access to safe, welcoming and equitable access to safe and welcoming nature spaces or parks and green space, and who are focusing on, number one, the amount and quality of research, you know, so you could frame it at the very
Mhm.
beginning.
Right. Is everyone on the call in agreement that it should be right up front before we get into kind of what, the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to do? I mean, I like it there, but I just want to make sure everyone else. I see thumbs up. So what we can do, and Andy, I'm gonna delegate that
Mhm.
you that you take the information that everyone has shared here in terms of adding language, and we can draft a revised mission statement that we can share with the group and have everyone kind of approve it.
Absolutely. Yep. I can work on that here and get that going.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your opinion, and we will have a draft of an updated mission statement here soon for you all to look at as well. Last call for any more comments before we move on to speakers here. Just want to give one more chance.
Just a little more direction on my comment. I really think what I was talking about is actually in here. It's really kind of throughout it. And so I'm not sure it needs to be a separate item, but somehow it just come through in what's already in here.
So you're not saying change anything to mention practitioners because
Only that maybe the wording, I guess, when I read this carefully, it's here, it's multidisciplinary network. That's right there in the first sentence. And then this part about the development and implementation. I mean, those are all the things that I was saying. I just, if anybody has any ideas to make that clear or somehow reinforce it, that would be great. But the closer I look at it, the more I realize, wow, this is saying what I just said. So I don't, yeah.
Right.
Just thinking, since we do list out researchers and practitioners, and we say academia, nonprofit organizations, government, private sector, are we missing anybody in that? I don't know if we are. Is that kind of all encompassing the way we want it to be, or does that need to change a little bit? Is professionals better than practitioners?
No, I think I think academia, nonprofit organizations, government, and the private sector. I'm not sure I can think of who we're missing there other than,
Or at least who would not identify themselves as fitting in that?
and maybe are there anybody who's, for lack of a better word, general public that we want to be involved? Who are not members of a nonprofit organization, for example. That's the only thing I can think of.
well, like students, like folks like
Okay.
Andy,
I mean, we could just say community stakeholders.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, because that's a little more open and then that
Yeah.
all encompassing.
Any other comments on adding in maybe other pieces to that statement or any parts that people don't fit into one of those, and check in the chat really quick. All right, last call.
I think that addition sounds pretty good.
I like community stakeholders. I think that's
Yeah.
good.
Edie added
Good
something, intentional communication networking with field-based park professionals.
All right.
I think they're included in the folks who we've listed though.
They're kind of government is kind of who they are, yeah.
That does kind of bring up a good point, though, too, is in our wording of the equitable access or equity, when we do word that, it might we kind of need to make sure we're defining that maybe in the way we want to define that. Because as who AD mentioned, there's the infrastructure piece that a lot of people think of when they think of equity of access, but then, like you said, the culture and making sure we're not leaving anyone out, or that was kind of a lot of the conversation a few weeks ago as well. So how we're talking about equity in terms of all the aspects of equity, not just making sure that there's a park close to everybody. That's one aspect of equity, but then there's other aspects of equity.
I think that's a good point too, Rich, to make sure that we are encompassing all of that.
It wouldn't hurt to put well, no, it's already there. Every time I think there's something missing, I reread it and there it is. To me, I was going to say there's a difference between government and then practitioners, but they're both there. So practitioners from government, maybe practitioners just needs to be, it just gets more confusing. I was going to suggest putting practitioners after academia, but then they're right there in front of it. To differentiate them from government. A lot of park and recreation officials or agency people are part of the government, but other parts of the government that are not practitioners would be elected officials, for example.
Well, they would be the community stakeholders, perhaps.
Yeah. I think that community stakeholders is a great term.
But I think Edie's point you can correct me if I'm wrong, Edie, but had to do with if we just said equitable access, how we make sure that that's broad enough to not just mean infrastructure, but also mean, who's there can influence whether it's welcoming or not, kind of thing. I don't have an answer.
All right. All right, let's go ahead and, go ahead, Ron.
The last thing I want to say is,
Yep.
some of you people on the call probably put this original one together, and after tearing it apart here, it's pretty good. Good work, guys.
Yeah, but Edie did put in the chat exactly. I don't have the best wording, but do think we need to acknowledge equity on multiple levels. So it seems like we're in agreement on that as well.
Yeah.
Well, maybe maybe that's for next time. We'll try to edit this up, and then we can, we'll put something in to try to incorporate these changes, and then next time we can tweak it as needed to make sure we.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Satisfy everybody. Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to speakers here. So as you can see, again, like I said earlier, there is a lot of openings for speakers here.
There's a lot of openings.
We do have a speaker lined up for November, which we'll get into a little bit when we get to upcoming meetings. And then the other thing I did want to discuss is a December meeting. So I don't know what the traditional or what you guys have done, what the work group has done in the past, but the December meeting would fall, I believe, that week of Christmas.
On the 26th?
It would be the
last Monday.
The 26th. So it would be, yep. And so I'm assuming most of you.
I'm off. Yeah, I'm off then. So
exactly.
I hope the rest of you are off then too.
So wondering what we want to do with that, whether we want to move it up to maybe the third Monday of the month, or if we want to even move it up a little farther into the second Monday of the month, kind of getting a gauge on what people want to do with that December meeting, or just missing it all together if that's what we choose to do, or focusing maybe just on this mission statement quick. Yeah, any comments on that December meeting? Any ideas people have for that?
Well, I think December can be a pretty busy time for everyone, that maybe we just want to cancel the December meeting and not have it.
Okay.
It'll also give us, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I won't be able to make it. I'm actually going to be out of the country, so.
You're always.
Do we want to know where, Robbie? Tell us.
I know, he's always somewhere.
I'm spending Christmas in Thailand with my business partner, my ex-business partner. We're both retired from the firm. But yeah, he lives in Thailand, so I'm going to be there.
All right, thanks. We're gonna live vicariously through you.
I know, take pictures. You're gonna have, you're the speaker in January and. we
Yeah,
want a
maybe we
slideshow.
could talk about what they're doing in Thailand. Yeah. I'll ask him. Maybe there's something there that's worth reporting.
I'm sure there is. And
Yeah.
then Laura is trying to get us to work to get people geared up to use outdoor spaces around the holidays. All right, yes.
Yeah, but it'll also give us time to line up speakers for the, for the second,
Right.
well, for
Mhm.
2023 then.
Yeah.
And I guess I might put a Kimmy on the spot since you're at CDC. Would you maybe have some suggestions from different organizations that you've come across in your work at CDC that might be, that might have useful information for the Parks and Green Space Work Group?
Yeah, so I'm actually a part of the CDC Built Environment Work Group here at CDC, and we also have monthly meetings where we have people who work in the field come and present. So I can look back at and see who presented on Parks and Green Space, and then maybe give them your contact information, see if they'd be interested in presenting here as well. Could definitely
Yeah,
look
that
into
would be great.
That would
Yeah.
be wonderful, yeah.
And maybe a way to approach NRPA to get them back into our loop, to have them present on their latest initiative.
Yeah.
Oh, I can ask them too. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, thanks.
Then we've got something in chat.
Yeah, Laura said, I think the White House initiative would be good for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting. It's interdisciplinary with everything but health related. It's agriculture, EPA, National Park Service. Supposedly the CDC and HHS were, involved, but they weren't listed on the agencies that were in that. So anyway, I think that, and I do think it would be great to have somebody from APHA to talk about what they're thinking along these this area as well. Just from an association standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we could actually ask whoever's leading the physical activity section, maybe to give a presentation to our group on what's the priorities for the physical activity section.
Would Carissa know that? She was the past leader on that, wasn't she?
Yeah, I think yeah. Well, it's been Noel Brango the last year, so he's going to be he'll be the immediate past president, so they should be having a new one being elected maybe at the meeting next week.
My understanding is that most of the work in this area has been done by the environmental health section rather than the
Really?
PA section. The PA section, I think, should be involved with it, but I think right now they're not so involved in this area. But environmental health, I think, is probably the one leading most of the APHA effort around this, including the policy statement they have on this. It was environmental health, not PA.
Yeah, and to that end, I think about the discussions we've had over the last 2.5 years about, how you make space, welcoming and safe to all people. And I participated in several online discussions about how people of color don't feel welcome in some spaces. And I was just wondering, it would be interesting to have a community-based organization that serves those communities to talk about what their experience has been in making those spaces more, more comfortable, or more, whether it's affinity groups or whatever. That would be a good conversation to have at some point if we had somebody who'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, so we just had Myron Floyd speak last month about making parks safe and welcoming for everyone, for an initiative that he's been working on with the North Face. And they actually fund a number of different organizations who are working on that. I wonder, we could maybe reach out to Myron and see if he could connect us to one of their grantees, and maybe the grantees could also speak to us. So that could be, and that might be
They're
a
all
great
on the
space.
They're all on the website. I mean, so we could just look over them ourselves and decide.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the contact information might even not be on there.
That's a good idea, Sandy. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was good presentation.
Oh,
Let's
good.
see.
You
So there,
you heard
yeah.
him. All right, good.
Digging the speakers here, just getting away from the calendar a little bit. So if at all after this meeting or anytime in the future you come up with anybody that you may be interested in to hear speak, or you know someone who might be willing to speak, feel free to reach out to me again at that email. It's ajohns48@tulane.com or tulane.edu, and I'll go ahead and reach out to them there too. I do want to bring up one.
Rich just put somebody in the
Oh, Rich
chat.
just put
Yeah,
some-
that's interesting, Rich.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I just
Oh,
I
interesting.
threw that in there for you, Andy, just so you had
Okay.
a record of it. But he works with Aaron Hipp at NC State, and they're both working on this virtual reality. I think actually Jay Maddock is also at Texas A&M, is working on a similar thing around using virtual reality and augmented reality as ways of engaging people in the outdoors. But yeah.
Yeah, that seems very interesting to me. Some potential ideas we've had previously that maybe didn't work out, or we hadn't lined anything up from the past fellow Jem. So she connected me with someone from the Safe Routes Partnership, which is all about having safe routes to schools. And so I've been in contact with her. I'm not sure if she quite fits in the parks and green space, or if it's more I forget the official word, transportation or whatever different work group there. But she's willing to talk in 2023 once they have some findings, if we're interested to work with her, or we can push her off to another networking group. Another few ideas. So April Osborne, she's a local librarian and a children's outreach program coordinator. And she agreed to talk, must have been a while ago, about a project entitled Story Walk in a Park, which was to integrate reading and physical activity and improve literacy in community health, which may be something interesting. And then Metro Park, go ahead.
Can Well,
Oh,
I was
sorry,
just
go
gonna
ahead, Lauren.
say, so I wonder if the April, I was to put two libraries together. There's a library up in Lake County at Highland Park, I believe it is, that decided to create a walking group for women in particular. And they decided that, they didn't have the resources to go to the forest preserves. They didn't have the money for the gas or whatever. So they would just decide to meet at the library and have a weekly walking club. I don't know if they, again, I don't know if this necessarily, but it would be kind of interesting to hear two libraries talk about how they're trying to
Encourage physical activity and use of outdoor spaces.
and to be community informed. I
Mhm.
think they were having 50 women show up at some point. So, because it was community too. So
The rural working group, I attend some of their meetings. They have a focus on libraries and how they get the particularly good key points in rural areas, because there's not a lot of infrastructure, but there's usually a library. And so they're often used in less populated areas. So they're doing a lot. I don't know if they've done something like this, but it sounds similar to a lot of the stuff that they're thinking about and talking about over at the rural work group. So that we could connect with them if we don't have enough, or, to put together a little panel or something.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
a panel would be a great idea.
Edie did put in a few more equity focused affiliations that may be interested, so I'll check that out. Rich suggested Jay Maddock on the Nature Survey project. He led as part of the Parks and Workspace group. And then Edie again said, for young adults, there are many diversify outdoor groups that highlight representation in outdoor spaces. For example, Black girls trekking, etc., which may be interesting as well.
and I like your last point about the economic study too, that lowering healthcare costs. We all would like to have data, when we're trying to do something in parks and get folks to spend money in parks and how they're important. And if these people that sounds like a great study that a lot of people would be interested in.
Well, and that's a huge evidence gap. I think Akimi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure didn't the community guide or CDC just come out with something that basically says that we just don't have enough evidence on the cost effectiveness of these types of programs?
The, I want to say yes, but also I know David is working with them on an economic study about parks, so I haven't looked at it in detail yet. So it may fit it or it may change, but I know that's coming
Yeah.
soon. Yeah.
Oh, these are all great ideas.
Yeah, something else to look into if that's what we're interested in. So I'll give you one more chance to speak up here if you haven't had a chance yet too. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on.
I think you got a long list to contact people
Yeah.
for the rest of the year.
Which is great.
I mentioned the project I'm working on with the Park Service, which is the Trails Benefits Calculator. We presented on that at Shift for anybody who was in that session and did a workshop on it. But as we get further along in there, as we get into this sort of draft the actual algorithm, it might be good to have Shelton, Brown, and Attila from the National Park Service kind of talk about that project.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Maybe Robbie, maybe you can keep us just informed or updated on when it might be useful to reach out to them when they're far enough along.
Yeah,
If they'd
I
feel
can do that.
comfortable presenting on it.
Sure.
Yeah, that was a great session, Robbie, at Shift. I was actually just typing a message to you asking if that would be something you might want to present.
All right.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
I do want to circle back really quick. Did anyone have any opinions on this Safe Route partnership? Hearing them in our group, sending them maybe to a different work group. Does anyone have any opinions on that?
Well, there are a lot of initiatives on safe routes to parks, Andy. I don't know if
Okay.
you want, I mean, I think, I'm trying to remember if the Safe Routes to School partnership also focuses on it or if it's predominantly NRPA. So
It was my understanding that Natasha was involved with Safe Routes to Parks.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if it's Safe Routes to School. I think she is directly involved with Safe Routes to Parks.
Okay. Then that fits our group really well. So I'll continue communication with her on that. So perfect. Thanks. And then so moving on here. Do we have any subgroup updates that people want to give?
We should probably like talk about them and maybe have them listed out. And I think things are wrapping up on some that we need to think about new projects. But
I wonder if we need
Yeah.
to do something around this White House initiative. I'm not sure what, but yeah.
well, with the last something we wrote a letter to the Federal Register from this group. So that's like at the very minimum, that's just a little thing. Not really a project, it's just a letter, but I guess PAPREN does consider it an output or something, which is helpful. We need to have PAPREN likes to have each subgroup have products and every year, and a letter is fine, a study is fine, a presentation is fine, any of that counts. So it's always sort of in the back of our heads as we do these projects to make sure, or it doesn't have to be an academic thing, it can be a brief kind of thing or easy to read, whatever, something. So it could be on the website that policymakers can use. But we always need to keep sort of, what are we going to get out of it? How are we going to, put it forward, if you will. Laura, you're going to add to that?
Yeah, so Terry and I have been talking a lot about the most recent recommendation from the Task Force on Prevention about screening for depression and anxiety down to 8 years old. And I just feel like the more organizations, whether it's PAPREN or individual organizations, sending a letter to the task force saying that we believe that, time spent outside in nature spaces, in parks and green spaces is essential to the health and well-being of all ages, but especially if you're going to be talking about reaching into the younger ages, that there should be sort of a ready toolkit, depending on the severity the screening or something along those lines. And would love to have a discussion about the response to that recommendation.
I really like that. So I think a toolkit is perfect. I think we've done a number of academic papers and presentations, and maybe now is the time to really think about the practitioner side of things and having a toolkit that responds to this huge need and meets the task force, sort of gets at the recommendations. So I think that's a great idea.
So Laura, is that something you and Terry want to lead, or are you just thinking of proposing it to the work group and seeing if someone else is?
I mean, I'm happy to lead on it. I think I would need to have guidance. This is a new space for me, I was my own like nature leading practitioner. I have a healthcare policy background, so I am always thinking national level because that has the biggest impact. And so I think whatever, I'd be happy to help co-facilitate or something, a toolkit development or recommendation with people who'd be interested in it. Sure.
Okay, so we can start to develop a list of proposed new projects, and once I think we'll need to reach out to the rest of our work group because it's a relatively small number here today, and find out if others have ideas, and maybe we can then start to circulate that list and people can sign on that are interested in the different proposed subgroup projects.
Do we want to do a survey, so get people to respond online, and then we could circulate something?
Sure.
Yeah, I can definitely put something together for that.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thinking
Yeah,
a
we
little
have-
more on the trails calculator. So right now, the Park Service has funded this first phase, which is kind of a lit review and a model of the calculator itself. But the intent is hopefully that will lead to some more funding from the Park Service to do a next step, which would be an actual sort of a beta test. And I don't know, where that's going to go and how it's going to go or who it would go through or any of that stuff. But who knows, maybe we could somehow get involved with that too.
That's a great idea too. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have to think through all those details, but that's a great idea.
Yeah,
I like
so
that.
another reason to get them to come in and tell us more about it once we get to the next stage of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, sorry. No, never mind.
Absolutely. Before we move on, does anyone else have any ideas of projects they may want to bring up while we're here? I know there's only 8 people on the meeting, but before we.
Yeah, I was gonna comment, like, we haven't really addressed the subgroup updates. And so
Oh, yes.
maybe we could just type that up, because we had a number of different projects to see where we are, rather than us trying to vaguely remember things or get it wrong or whatever.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go ahead and move on. We are wrapping up on time here. I just wanted to give an open mic. I know we have all been participating in the discussion here, which is great, but if anyone else has anything they want to throw in, projects they're working on, anything, now would be a good chance to.
Well, I have a question, Andy. Did you hear from people that this was a bad time? Or do we need to think about a new time?
I got a handful of bounce back emails for people who were on vacation or something, but I didn't feel like it was a ton. And so I didn't hear anything other than those automatic bounce back emails or anything.
Do you remember how many people we have on our list, or our
Let me check for you.
150 or so, I think.
Yeah, it's over 100. I wonder if we're gonna survey people for ideas on new projects. Maybe we also survey about the time of the work group to see if this time is still a good time.
Okay. Yeah, we can absolutely do. Let me get you a full count here. Number wise, so we have 140 members on the list. So it's going to a good number of people.
I want to say we've usually, when we've had speakers, we've usually had 12 to 15 at least.
That is the trend. Yeah, looking at
Yeah.
the attendance trend, speakers definitely increase that number. We've even had up to almost 30 people in the call before. So
And there's no way, Andy, that are you a new, your email wouldn't go to people's junk folders because you're new, would it? Or
I think because it's like an actual person's email, I don't think so, but that's something that we could definitely look into.
But you're sending it from the Parks and Rec work group. Well, I don't know.
That's true. It is coming
How does it come?
It is coming from the Parks and Rec work group email. Yeah, that is true. So something that we could point out to people too.
Girl Trek, Edie mentions Girl Trek founders be willing to attend a meeting focused on equity focused. Yeah, that'd be great. I've had, they've come to, one of them's from New Orleans. I've met them. I don't, like, I'm not on a communication basis with them, but we've met. There's an active group here in New Orleans. Girl Trek.
Yeah.
That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I do know, I mean, for this meeting in particular, there were a lot of people that that had conflicts just for today that couldn't make it, which is one of the reasons why we have fewer on the call.
Okay. Well, yeah, if we're doing a survey, then hopefully people will respond to that and.
Yeah. And then
They're
Laura,
all
you
working
said
on
we
their
could do-
Halloween costume today.
Yeah, there is
It
that.
is, it is a minor holiday, yes, or a
Yeah.
major holiday for some, so. In New
Laura,
Orleans.
you had mentioned we could do a joint meeting, maybe with Grand Rounds. Can you talk more about what you're thinking there?
oh, I just was saying, we could have a joint, if we invited Girl Trek in particular.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
that we
yeah.
could do one with the equity working group. Because, just not only do they have a huge social media presence, but they also have an annual meeting, and they've just their numbers have grown. So through motivation, through social media, they have many different ways they have built this community of physical activity in particular.
Well, would you recommend that they actually be a Grand Round speaker versus one of the work groups? I mean, because Grand Rounds
don't know.
pulls into it pulls the entire network in. So those
Right.
calls get over 100, 100
Yeah.
individuals on them.
Well, and that sort of leads to my very first question, which was this whole research focus, because I have no idea what kind of evaluation and research focus they have, evaluation that they have done for their program. So
Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, Grand Rounds, I mean, it's made up of practitioners and a lot of the different nonprofit advocacy organizations that work in this space. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be focused only on a research related topic.
it could also be how people have used social media to get people moving, like, even Black people outdoors, they just do TikToks all the time, and they go to amazing places and they post it not only on Instagram, but on TikTok. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people they have following them.
Wow.
So that's another idea.
It would be maybe a lesson on how to motivate people and get people active, kind of using social media, using different tools or whatever ways.
Cool. Any other, we are wrapping up here in time, but any other comments people want to make before I just mention who our next speakers are? No. All right. So our next meeting is going to be Monday, November 28th. It's at 12 Eastern, 11 Central, unless that time changes from that survey, but I don't think we'll quite have that response yet. But it's Christopher Seitz. He's Rich's colleague at Appalachian State, and he did a study on park enjoyment and secondhand exposure to substance use and litter, a crowdsourced vignette study. I do want to mention that this meeting will kind of have like a reversed agenda because he does have class at this time, but he will be able to join about halfway through. So we'll hear from him at the end of the next meeting there and kind of get everything taken care of at the beginning.
Yeah, we can go over the revised mission statement or whatever.
Exactly, it kind of works out well for that. And then I just want to bring up PAPREN Grand Rounds, which will be Wednesday, November 16th at 11 Eastern, and it's Jeff Whitfield from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and he's talking on innovation sources for physical activity surveillance there. So just something to put on your radar for that.
And just a reminder, you have to register for the grand rounds. Anybody can join, but you got to register.
Yep, so I'll go ahead and put that link in the follow-up email here too, for that registration for grand rounds. So that will be there. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us. I know it was a smaller group today, but I want to thank you all for participating, because everybody did in fact participate. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy Halloween and whatever that means for you. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Andy.